And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Tuesday morning's flying weather. IFR, Northern Bering Sea, into the western part of the state here, a band down across the southern, from the Kuskokwim Delta into the western Alaska Range, another band scooting up into the southern Koyukuk Valley area there in the Yukon. Otherwise, northeast part of the state out to the Arctic coast, VFR, some IFR here, Susitna Valley, down into Cook Inlet, maybe the Manduska Valley there with marginal VFR for the Copper River Basin, and northern Panhandle and along the north coast here, IFR. Then for the afternoon, big improvement down there for the southeast coast, becoming VFR, except lingering marginal VFR central and south coast. And pretty good here, Gulf of Alaska, VFR, Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, Yukon Kuskokwim Delta. In fact, just about all of southern Alaska with some lingering marginal VFR in areas, diminishing throughout the day for south central Alaska. And then marginal VFR here over the area from about the Koyukuk Valley and the Yukon River there out to the Seward Peninsula, up to the Western Brooks Range, North Slope Arctic Coast, VFR. IFR now, Northern Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island, down to St. Matthew Island there, otherwise VFR for the Eastern Aleutians. And then for Wednesday morning, IFR kind of retreating back to the west here, still in close enough to cover St. Lawrence Island areas, and marginal VFR for the remainder of the Bering Sea, becoming a little more scattered down toward the Eastern Aleutians, marginal VFR for the Alaska Peninsula. And the interior, areas of VFR, along with some areas of marginal VFR there from the North Slope right on down into Prince William Sound, the Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island. But the southeast coast, actually the North Gulf Coast, Copper River Basin, right on down across the Panhandle. Good VFR for Wednesday morning and in the afternoon. VFR, southeast coast up to Yakutat, some marginal VFR for the North Gulf Coast, Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet, and along the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range. Patch of IFR there over the Auckland Mountains, and marginal VFR, Yukon Kuskokwim Delta, Nunivak Island, much of the Bering Sea, but looks like it'll be VFR for the afternoon Wednesday for the Eastern Aleutians up the Alaska Peninsula. Mostly VFR, interior Alaska, all the way up to the Arctic coast. Passes for Adigan, Brooks Range passes, two of them, Adigan and Anatuvik, VFR for Tuesday. Lake Clark and Merrill starting out marginal but improving to VFR for most of the day, late morning into the afternoon, and rainy, same forecast, lower conditions early on, becoming VFR. Windy, marginal VFR, improving to VFR as well. And then Isabella and Mentasta, both VFR on either approach. Tanita, also forecasting VFR. Portage, marginal to start, VFR to finish, and for Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels here, 2,000 feet, barely up to the Alaska Peninsula tomorrow morning, and south of the Panhandle, in fact, even south of the Queen Charlotte Islands there with the surface, right along or off the coast, but north of the Pribilof Islands here, and the Aleutians, of course. And for icing, nothing significant here for mainland Alaska, on down maybe some elevated threats of some isolated moderate icing here for the southern Panhandle. Otherwise, the main area of considerable moderate icing will be out here over the central or east central Bering Sea, west of Nunivak Island, well south of St. Lawrence Island, and looking clear for the Aleutians. And the jet stream, 33,000 foot winds. We've got southerly winds at 95 knots across the Aleutian Range. Otherwise, west-northwest becoming more northwesterly, only 65 to 70 knots there, cutting down across the Susitna Valley into Prince William Sound. Pretty light for the Panhandle. And at 9,000 feet, more significant winds at this elevation, with a large low out here over the Bering Sea, and southwest 75-knot winds there across the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, turning south 90 knots along the southwest coast here into Bristol Bay and Kodiak Island. Much lighter over the interior and light and variable here over the southeast coast. 3,000 feet, strongest winds here over the eastern Bering Sea from the Pribilofs right into the southwest coastal areas. 65-knot winds pushing into Kodiak Island, 75-knot winds here ahead of the front there, approaching Nunivak Island and the southwest coast, becoming west-southwest at 55 knots behind the front there, but that's north of the eastern Aleutians. Light and variable over the interior to the Arctic coast, down across the southeast coast. Turbulence-wise, considerable moderate turbulence expected here over the eastern Bering Sea into the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula, and the eastern Aleutians, and near the Pribilof Islands. Surface to 8,000 feet. Pretty smooth, though, over the central eastern interior, as well as on up across the Brooks Range. Smooth conditions there, also for the southeast coast.